As soon as go to 21, we're at 21. Go live. There we go. Hello, folks.
Hey guys.
Welcome to Rational Science. We have a great day today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about extinction, followed by physics, and then opening the floor for questions. Okay, so let's get started with some of the subject matters related to extinction. Okay, let me go with this. See if we can go through it fast. Here, my son will control me so that I don't spend too much time. Fellow says, "What is blowing up is Marxism." Okay,
Marxism is blowing up.
Yeah, and capitalism. Capitalism has won in China. See, you can see China is now blue and it's the United States, which this fellow argues is going to be red, or is red. Where the new empire will rise post-2030s. So he predicts that after 2030, China is going to be the new empire. And it's not going to be communist, it's going to be, I guess, capitalist, right? Marxism is blowing up in Europe right now, will blow up in the next 10 years. The governments have gone along because of the great collapse in confidence in government. Trump, I guess, fellows into politics a lot, okay? And he says, collapse in Marxist promises all based on borrowed money they plan on defaulting on. Okay, so they borrow a lot of money, they're going to default, and what's going to happen? Well, he says extinctions of governments are inevitable. Okay, is this what's going to happen? If we have an extinction of government, okay, what's going to replace it? Government?
The next one. I mean, that's kind of how it's always worked. Revolutions, right?
Is that what it is? We get, but nobody's saying it's the extinction of governments.
Governments as such. Like, there's not going to be any after that, is what he's saying?
Yeah.
Just anarchy.
Yeah, but it's a polite anarchy. It's not the guy with the Molotov cocktail.
There's no such thing as no government.
No?
Because, I mean, that's just how human beings are. Even back in the day when there's clans, you can't, I mean, it's far-fetched to call it government, but it's a form of government. It's a form of how do you organize 8 billion people? That's all we're talking about.
Well, what if everybody governs himself? I guess that's what he's saying. He's saying everybody just does his own thing without any law governing him. He just does it because it's the right thing to do, I guess. And if someone commits a crime, I don't know who takes care of that. I know the anarcho-capitalists say, well, you can resolve that also through marketing mechanisms. You know, how you punish someone, maybe punish the person through money, through his pocket. So I don't know what comes after no government.
They never talk about that part.
Yeah, I know. At least they don't go in any great detail. Marx also said this, by the way. You know, the idea was that, you know, we were going to get this world government taken there by, what is it called, the dictatorship of the proletariat. Once you reach that point, you get rid of government altogether because you find out that you don't need it, and what continues from there on forever and ever is anarchy. Anarchy in the best sense of the words, meaning no government whatsoever.
This guy says, when the government's gone, we'll go back to the Shire. The Shire's from Lord of the Rings, where the hobbits go.
Okay, let's continue.
We're friendly with each other.
Okay, let's continue. Imagine a person who has so much food they could never eat it before it perishes. You don't think they would trade any of it for anything at all? Nonsense. Why didn't trade grind to a complete halt when all other fiat currencies in the past died, Bill? Well, they didn't die because they didn't all die at the same time. See, when the dollar dies, that's it for all of us because all currencies are essentially pegged to the dollar. Okay, I would trade food for an object if I thought the object could get me more food soon. Not after the final collapse. After the final collapse, if you trade, you're trading your life.
I love the example. Trade a fish for a rifle round so you can kill a deer. I think that trade will be done against your will. You know what I mean? You'll get the rifle round.
My God, the way you think.
You'll get the rifle round, he'll get the fish. Trust me.
Oh yeah, you come for the rifle. You're the one who put the egg in the.
You're looking for a bullet. I got it with your name on it right here.
Okay, and I said, you said you cannot stop people from trading. This is in direct contradiction to your theory that trade will fail because money fails, okay? According to your black market facts, trade will continue regardless of what happens to the money in use today. Yeah, I said I gave the example of Cuba, where people, despite it, they're in a communist country, they have all this black market out there, and the trade is primarily for food, which is interesting, right? And so here's my answer: can't stop people from trading as long as the global economy is running. As long as the Cuban peso is still out there on the streets, yeah, there's going to be trade. It's the question: what happens when money is no more? Will there be trade?
I mean,
Okay.
sometimes I try to think back of just historical times. How did they trade back in the day when there was no money? When we're just talking about bartering.
Subsistence farming came into commercial farming. That's when they started trading. A guy was a better carpenter or
So
whatever.
they never traded before then?
There was
Here's the question. Here's the question. Was there in the history of humanity ever a time period where where it was bartering without any money?
Yeah, in fact, you can see it in the Bible. The story of Ruth. Okay, if you look up the story of Ruth, the book of Ruth in the Bible, she worked for barley. She put her work, she traded her labor, collected barley, and part of that barley was that she collected, part of that was used to pay for her and her mother-in-law, which she also maintained. Okay, so yeah, there was a time where people worked for food.
But it's always under the umbrella of government. You can't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
have
of course.
free trade in the sense of like no government trade. Why wouldn't I just shoot? Why would the guy with the bigger gun not just take it?
Well,
that's the question.
I think what the way it developed is that this farmer was over here, the other one farmer was over there. Maybe a lot of them were relatives, clans, or whatever. And from there, what developed was, oh, you do this better than me. Why don't you give me your chair that you made? You're a better carpenter, and I'll give you some corn for it.
Yeah.
So first, it was within people you trusted. Obviously, it had to be either an extended family or neighbors that for some reason you eventually managed to trust. And the little villages developed, the tribes. How did the Indians do it? The Indians, American Indians, for example, they developed their societies. And you say, how did this guy at some point decide to trust that other guy over there? And it had to be at some point where that trust developed because they settled the land. They started maybe farming or even hunting, and they, for some reason, did not shoot at each other.
Yeah,
and
I
they
find that
finally
hard to
went in.
believe.
Yeah.
I don't think that happened. I think it was always under the umbrella of one big muscle guy saying, "Hey guys, play nice," i.e. the police. There was always a form of police going around. There has to be peace before there's trade. That's what I'm saying.
Within the clan, I can understand that perfectly.
At all times.
No, but I mean within the clan, especially, right? We can imagine that there's this alpha guy, I guess you could call it, whatever, patriarch kind of guy, and he set down the law, and those that were weaker said, "Okay, we'll follow that law. I think it's good for me, for my health." And so from there, I think that's where law came into being, government came into being.
But I'm just saying the difference between what this guy's saying. I'm saying the end of the world kind of. Anarchy and trade don't mix. That's what I'm saying. Because you have to have peace. You have to have no guns before there's trade. There has to be that repercussion if you renege on the trade or mess up the trade or something. There has to be consequences, or they have to at least be certain that you're not just going to shoot them and take the stuff. Yeah. It's kind of like a illegal drug deal kind of things, where they have the pounds of cocaine and the other guy's got the millions of dollars or whatever.
And one does not come up with the goods.
Not only that, but you never see them come with no AK-47s because then the other guy just thank you. That's what I'm saying.
Or they both come with AK-47.
Yeah, just to make sure.
To make sure it's even.
To make sure it's even. Exactly.
It's an even deal.
Trade and anarchy just don't really mix.
Okay, regarding family, we have here, get rid of Social Security, and then one of the reasons to have kids magically reappears. Okay, so he says, I stated it in a different way. I said, if the state won't take care of you when you're old, you better start having kids. That's essentially what he's saying. He says the laws are the problem instead of the cities. Remember, it's one of the reasons that we stop having kids is that the state takes care of the old as well as of the kids.
Social Security made us sterile. That's kind of
Yeah,
that's a
yeah. It's one of the factors, okay, but it's not the most important factor.
see
Again,
that comment shit.
the most important factor is we move from the country to the cities, okay, and that's the main one. Okay, another fellow along the same lines, similar, says women don't have high school degrees have more kids. Who don't have high school degrees have more kids or babies. In very rural areas, we have more parents that homeschool. There is no school bus for them. Significant family traits are taught in that environment. In government-run public schools, there isn't much of a presence in family values.
That's true.
Okay, but so what am I going to say to that? Well, let me say the following. I'm saying that family has changed through the ages. Okay, hunter-gathering, we had the clans. Era of farming, maybe 10,000 years, last 10,000 years. We had patriarchy, man of the house. He was the head of the household. He had power of life and death over everyone, from slaves to the wife. Okay, and then manufacturing, we ended up with the nuclear family, essentially mom, pop, and the kids. And today we have the singles society, the bachelors. We don't marry, or we're all divorced, or we're just casual.
Actually, hold it on. In this picture,
Yeah.
another thing that I was thinking of was just now they were talking about the family values not being so precedent, or not being so
Prevalent.
so prevalent in modern schools. And I think it's gone even a step further. Like the further back you go in time here, the hunter gathering is pure family values, and then it becomes more about the society and less about family as you go to the right. And now we have the extreme case where children are really being raised by the internet and have no family values.
Yeah, but I want you to see something else there in that graph. You see that when we started in hunter gathering, it was the many, and today we ended up with a few.
Yeah.
It's gotten smaller, and smaller over the
We're
years.
more individualistic.
Yeah. So the question is, what comes after bachelor, after singles?
The nuns.
We're already there.
NONE.
Okay, continue on here. Again, people say people come to the cities to create wealth. Okay? Wealth is what reduces populations, and that is why the poorest nations have the highest birth rates and the richest nations have the lowest birth rates. Well, I'm going to counter that. I'm going to say that this is not true, and this is a very widespread misconception that people have out there. Not only this fellow, but a lot of people have this idea. So here's my idea to oppose that. Okay, here you see it.
Looks like a correlation.
In the 19th century, it was the filthy rich who had kids. Okay, I hope to destroy the notion that it was today, because we see poor people having kids in the cities. We say, oh, it's the poor people. It used to be the rich people who had kids. In fact, that last one, the yellowish one there, you know who that is? That's Israel and his 12 sons, because he was a rich guy.
He could afford them.
He could afford them. He had someone to bequeath the land to, the sheep and all the stuff he had. That's why he had many kids, because he was a farmer. And it's when we went to the cities that we stopped having kids. So it's the fallacy of, I drink beer with water, and it gets me drunk. I drink wine with water, it gets me drunk. I drink whiskey with water, it gets me drunk. So it's water that's getting me drunk.
Yeah, it's the correlation mistake.
Yeah, and people here commit the same error. They say, oh, it's the poor people who have kids. It's got nothing to do really with the poor people. It's the poor people who came from the farms. They have no jobs in the cities. They either bring their kids from the country because they just came to the city, or they have still the culture of the country, and they bring that in there until they realize, especially the next generation, their kids, they realize you can't have kids anymore in the cities. Okay, so it's the city that stops the children from coming up, not so much the fact that they're poor. Why don't rich people have children? Okay, in the cities. Okay, why did they have them in the 19th century?
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Okay. Another issue, I mentioned this the other day, where we have the man who turned himself into a woman. Fellow in red there, you can see he looks pretty much like a man. and he changed his sex when he was over 30. That means he spent his whole life as a man, and then he snipped it off, turned himself into a woman, and now fights women in his category, and he's beating the crap out of them. And some women don't like that, you know. So I mentioned this the other day, and and I said, well, why don't we have unisex sports where we stop separating men from women, and we have everybody compete against everybody in every single sport. In other words, whether it's soccer, American football, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, whatever you can think of, especially the rough sports, everybody against everybody. No more female, no more male, okay? So we don't have to worry about this. And a fella replies, says, well, they can never win because they don't have testosterone. Okay, well, I don't know about that. I'm sure that if we take some of these girls who do kickboxing and so on, I'm sure they could beat the crap out of this fellow. Okay, and so he's got testosterone, they've got estrogen, but I'm sure, that if he fights one of these gals that is well trained, I think she would, I put my money on her. Now, so why am I saying this? I'm saying this because what I showed the other day is that women have come up the ranks, okay? And here you see it. You see this is 1936, the 100-meter dash. It was won by a fellow that's just famous. His name is Jesse Owens, or was Jesse Owens. Second guy was also Ralph Metcalf, another American, both of them black. And the third record, if they were to run in 1936 again, it would be Florence Griffith, who's got the women's world record today, right? And she would come in third, and she would beat this other fellow, Osendorp. And after him, it would have come the gal who won this year, who's Elaine Thompson. And she would have beaten the other three guys, all white, by the way, which have records which are lower than hers. Okay, so women have come up the ranks over time. They have become faster.
That's in 1936.
Yeah, 1936. So the question now is
anymore.
Yeah, no, but this is the point. The point that is, you're giving women enough time. Will they match men? This fellow says no because they don't have testosterone. Well, apparently testosterone has. I don't know. I'm suggesting, right? Play devil's advocate here. Maybe it's got nothing to do with it because here you have women who would have beaten men in the 1930s, right? Today, right? And if we give them another 100 years, maybe they're at the par with men. Maybe it's got nothing to do with testosterone and estrogen. We just think of women as the weak sex. And again, there's some women out there that can beat the crap out of many men. So I don't know about the weak sex. Okay?
That'd be really weird to see.
Yeah, but I mean, just given enough time,
No,
yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm suggesting it because I'm saying if everybody competes against everybody, right?
No, we don't have to worry about
Women, well, yeah, because the end of the world is near. But
I mean, you don't have to worry about like genders or any of the trans.
Yeah, if we do sports unisex, no more of this Olympic for women and Olympic for men. We just let everybody compete against everybody. Will women come up the ranks? And, I mean, after all, I'll give you an example. His name is Bruce Jenner. Today he changed his name and a little more than that, right? And he was the decathlon winner. I can't remember the year, but he won the gold medal. And he thought of himself as a woman. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of arguments there on all sides, defending and attacking. My point here is this guy at least thought he was a woman. He thought as a woman or thinks as a woman. And he beat the crap out of a lot of men out there. So, well, just food for thought. Okay. Paul says women have influenced their husbands throughout history. Yeah, and there we have a case in point. Who was it? Eve?
They weren't married though.
Yeah, but
they had sex out of wedlock.
But see,
I don't see no ring.
You see what
Who
she
married him?
She convinced Adam to take the bite. So is there always a woman? They say there's a woman behind every successful man. That she's the one who, kind of pulls the strings, or at least influences him significantly. Okay, another issue. Money. What is money? Well, we had different people talk about what money is. One guy says the most saleable good.
What's saleable mean?
Well, that I guess that you can trade it easier. It's liquid, right? But he defines currency as counterfeit money. That's why he says that money is not the same thing as currency, because currency is counterfeit money, fake money, okay, monopoly money. Okay.
You're saying currency is like the representation of wealth?
Well, he's saying that currency is what we have in the what you trade, what you really give in exchange, I guess, right? Again, it's not very specific, so we
Yeah.
can't make sense of that. But anyways, another fellow says currency is money that is being used or is in circulation. Okay, money is something used as a way to pay for goods and services and to pay people for their work. Another fellow says something similar, says bank account, money is being used to pay salaries, buy groceries, pay rent, and as long as it's used for goods and services, it keeps circulating in the economy and paying for many different things. Okay? And another fellow says money is debt. Okay? Being an owner means being a subject that pays tribute to the state.
We got
So-
a lot of opinions here about
Yeah,
money.
so people have a lot of different notions of what money is. Money is no longer, what we always thought it is. Apparently, not to everybody. Everybody has a different perspective.
My
on
perspective of money is like a favor.
a favor.
It's a favor that goes around.
Okay.
I give you paper, you give me a favor. You give the next guy that paper, he gives you a favor. That guy gives. It's just a favor. It's favors going one way, bills going the other.
I see it differently. I say money is what it says on that dollar bill. In God we trust. Money is trust. That's all it is. Once we lose faith, once we lose
Trust that you're gonna get a favor.
or something in exchange, whatever. Okay, but my point here is that money is trust. You trust that the other guy is going to give you something, or has given you something in your hand, or promises to give you something, and you accept that promise, right? Because what is the dollar? It means that you can take it to someone else. You trust that that other guy is going to accept it as well. But when we lose that trust, what is the value of money? Zip.
How weird would it be if you go to the supermarket to buy some apples and they're like, "Oh, sorry,
We don't accept money.
we don't accept money."
Well,
You're like, "Oh,
you can do that today. In
How
fact,
fucked would you be?
No, hold it. You can do that today. Do this experiment, okay? Trust me, okay? Just take some Vietnamese money to your supermarket and see if they accept it. And if they say no, you say, hold it. It's money. It's
money.
backed by the government of Vietnam. Yeah.
He's like, "We don't accept that Disney money. We accept our."
I thought
Disney
money was money. Well, it doesn't seem like it. Okay, continuing here. The money supply increases when banks make loans and decreases when borrowers pay principal back to the banks, okay? Fractional reserve banking is how banks make new money, okay? The Federal Reserve prints money based on nothing. And fellow clarifies here, the world's current monetary system became debt-based after the Nixon shock. What is he talking about? Talking about in which President Nixon suspended the link between money and gold in 1971.
Is that in concrete language that you can't turn in money for gold anymore?
Let me clarify that here. In fact, this is what it is. It's important for people to know this. The Bretton Woods system of monetary management, dating to 1944, established the rules for commercial and financial relations. The chief features of the Bretton Woods system were an obligation for each country to adopt a monetary policy that maintained its external exchange rates within 1% by tying its currency to gold. The United States, which controlled 2/3 of the world's gold, insisted that the Bretton Woods system rest on both gold and the US dollar. On 15th August 1971, the United States unilaterally terminated convertibility of the US dollar to gold, effectively bringing the Bretton Woods system to an end and rendering the dollar a fiat currency. The Bretton Woods system was over by 1973. The subsequent era was characterized by floating exchange rates. In other words, what happened was the gold standard was taken out, and today, essentially, what we have is what is known as a floating system, meaning that all currencies are pegged to each other. Essentially, all of them are pegged to the dollar, if you want to look at it that way, but they're all pegged to each other, meaning you can create, like this fellow just said, as much money as you can want.
Because you don't have to match it with something that exists in reality. Anymore.
Right. You don't have to peg it to the supply of gold that's out there. Gold has no value in that sense anymore. In fact, gold you could say it has an intrinsic value because you can do things with gold, right? But gold as money, it has no value. It has as much value as anything else.
It's a rock.
Yeah, it's a rock. If you want to accept it, fine. But the day we lose confidence in money, meaning all kinds of money, from Bitcoin all the way to gold to not food. Food is good money always. But nobody will trade it once the whole thing collapses. But gold, diamonds, jewels, no value whatsoever. Okay. In
You
fact,
can make computers out of them.
yeah. In fact, you have computers, you have cars, you have ships, airplanes. All that has value today. But when money collapses, you won't accept a ship. You will not accept an airplane. You will not accept a car, unless it comes full of food. Then you'll accept
I'll
it.
take it.
But otherwise, you won't accept it. What are you going to do with an airplane if, what are you going to fly around and see if you can find some food somewhere? Okay, here's another one. People falsely give money value. There is no value in money itself, correct. I like trade for what is valuable rather than using a measurement based on a fairy tale. There are current lifestyles that have little use for money. Currently, okay, again, lifestyle, you can have all that as long as the whole system doesn't collapse. When the system collapses, everybody's going to come to all those people who live without money. Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about hunter-gatherers out there, or farmers, right?
There's only three people who live without money. It's hunter-gatherers, like people who live in the woods.
Yeah.
People who have subsistent farming for themselves,
right.
which are also weirdos and like fringe people. And I guess monks would be the last one. People who just like beg.
Nomads, like the Bedouins, they go around with their camels. Of
But
course, they buy things and sell
But
things.
it doesn't amount to even 1% of the population.
No, of course not. That's true.
Right.
But this is the point. The point is, when the whole system collapses, now you got to worry about defense. And so, if you've got a farm, your farm is going to be overrun.
No, my defense is you eat your food as fast as you can. There's nothing here. There's nothing to steal.
Yeah, but then you're out of luck as well. Okay, related to COVID. Here we have a fellow says Bill Gates paid someone in the Wuhan lab to release the virus with Carl Schwab's blessing. Okay, and another fellow says, why would China create the bug to collapse the Western economy and release it in Wuhan? Totally illogical. And that's why, I came up with the COVID flow chart the other day. Okay, this is the reasoning.
Oh.
Okay, it goes something like this. You got to answer the question. Would Cuba, Iran, and other enemies of the American empire cooperate with the U.S. in a hoax? Okay? And if you say yes, well, I've got problems with you, and I think we remove your right to vote. Okay? And then if we continue, are there people so mean and greedy that they would have created the bug to take over the world? And if you say yes, I have if you say no, I have a tall building in New York that I'd like to sell you. Okay, yeah, there are mean people out there. Okay, but so the issue here is, would China be complicit in a hoax in light of the fact that it intends to be the next empire? Okay, so I doubt very much that China would cooperate with the United States. I think they are competing. And to think that they would all come up with this hoax in every country of the world, okay, especially the big guys, China, Russia, and the United States, that all these, the heads of those three countries would agree to, in advance, to say, hey, why don't we create a virus and scare everybody in the world to death, and then we can implement these laws where we can control them a lot better, blah, 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 blah. I don't think China would cooperate in such a thing if China's trying to take over the world.
I think we can all see that they could have adapted to the situation, but it still caught them off guard. But it's not that from coming into the situation, they're already planning, okay, guys, U.S., we all agree on this. We're going to let this go in Wuhan. That'd be kind of weird.
That's where I have a problem. And until someone can answer that question, I don't think that you can talk about a hoax. You got to justify the hoax. And the way you justify the hoax is saying, would all these enemy countries agree in advance to talk about this COVID and invent it out of nowhere?
Besides, it's so messy. You can't really plan very well when you're talking about a virus, a pandemic, because you don't know what the edges are. Like that's a bad conspiracy. If I wanted to do a conspiracy,
Okay, let's
assuming there was something to gain,
Okay.
throwing a pandemic is a bad idea because you don't know how powerful it'll be. You don't know how many countries it'll reach. You don't know what the consequences.
Yeah, you can't control it that
It's
well.
too you can't control it, which is like it doesn't seem like a good foundation to get any benefit from. Or
Yeah.
at least there are better things people would come up with.
Yeah, I doubt, and again, I doubt very much. This is my argument that all enemy countries
Yeah.
would agree to this,
That's the weird
and so that's the one you got to answer. If you can answer that, then I'll say that it's a hoax. Okay, but until then, I have to believe that this virus apparently is real. Okay, some people apparently are dying of this. And I don't know.
Sorry, continue.
Okay, fellas, cell is not the smallest life. Okay,
Uh-oh.
the issue is not smallest. I'm saying that the cell
Whoa,
is
whoa,
the.
whoa. We
is
jump
the-
real quick. What do you mean cell is not? You mean cell is not the smallest
yeah.
thing we can call life?
Yeah, well, this is what I want to clarify here. That I'm saying that cell is the first or the first unit of life. Okay, that doesn't mean it's the smallest. I wasn't talking about smallest, even though I think we have a match there. I think it is the smallest as well. But this guy continues, says the smallest life unit is I think he meant protists, and he says protit, okay, or microzyma. Which emerges from dead cells to perform cleanup. Okay, so let's find out what he's talking about. Okay, here
Janitor cells.
okay, so this is where we start on this. Here's the miasma theory, and this was the theory that governed most of medicine, I guess, world until 19th century. And it came from Galen, and even before them, Hippocrates. And they said diseases such as cholera and bubonic plague are caused by a miasma, okay, pollution, okay, a noxious form of bad air.
A fart.
They thought it was a bad air, yeah, floating in the atmosphere, okay. Miasma, poisonous vapor or mist filled with particles from decomposed matter that caused illness, okay.
It's not that far from the truth, is it?
Well, let's find out. What came after was from Mr. Louis Pasteur, and he came up with germ theory, okay, and that replaced this miasma theory. And it goes more or less like this. It's what we have today, essentially. That's what all the doctors believe in, or this is what they're taught, this is what they learn, this is what they teach. Okay, more or less like mathematical physics. It's grounded in stone now. Microorganisms can lead to disease. Okay, so we have these small organisms, they invade the human body and other animals. Their growth and reproduction within the host cause the disease. Okay, essentially it's what most of us intuitively or have read somewhere, this is what we all essentially are educated to believe. Okay, let's move on because here we have this other fellow who opposed Louis Pasteur. He was a contemporary. Okay, his name was Antoine Béchamp. Okay, also a French guy. Both of these were French. And he came up with the microzymian theory, which is what this fellow is referring to. And he had a different theory, which is no longer accepted today. But it's good to know that this theory is around because a lot of people believe more or less along the same lines as Mr. Béchamp. Okay, tiny molecular granulations known as microzymas, okay, small ferments. He called them like that because they tended to ferment sugar, okay, that have been observed in the cells of plants and animals are living elements. He said there is something living which is smaller than the cell. In fact, it's part of the cell. Survives after the death of the organism. Microzyma is a builder and destroyer of cells. It precedes life at the cellular level. Microzymas are very sensitive to biological signals, responding to changes in the terrain, in other words, the environment, okay? Especially pH, he says. When the terrain becomes compromised, the microzymas change into microscopic forms, it turns into bacteria, okay, that contributes to the development of illness. Béchamp pleomorphic theory considers the internal environment as the most important contributing factor to
The
disease. Right?
microzymas turn into bacteria, so these
Well,
precede even bacteria.
yeah. So this is kind of weird because I don't know about microzymas turning into bacteria, but this is more or less the theory. According to Bechamp, these microzymas were part of the cell. When the cell dies, the microzymas never die. So I guess he was talking about molecules and not about living entities, but he called them, or he believed that they were living entities. And, what affected the microzymas? The environment. So the theory was that it wasn't disease that got you sick and killed you. It was these microzymas which survived the cell, and because of the environment, they triggered something within your body. So it's what a lot of people believe today, that it's the environment that affects you. That's what we eat and what we breathe, and all this pollution out there. So a lot of people believe in that stuff even today. And that comes really from Bechamp. It's like we've reinvented him, or he never died, like the microzymas. And all I can tell you is that the medical establishment does not accept that theory. Everybody believes in, or more or less, I'd say 99% of the doctors out there believe in the germ theory. They go along with Mr. Louis Pasteur. Okay, so that's food for thought.
There's not a big difference between them, is there?
Well, one says it's the environment, and the other fellow says, no, it's the disease.
But environment includes the germs.
No, but this is what he was saying. He's saying there's something in the germs themselves, in this case, the cell, okay? Because you could have a germ like bacteria is a germ, and like COVID, it's a virus. And what is a virus? A virus is DNA, which is encapsulated within proteins. Okay, so that's what a virus is. And what this guy is saying, there's something on the outside or within that he calls microzymas, and these microzymas, apparently he considered them living entities. He even suggested, or maybe believed, that they turn into bacteria or gave origin to the cell. But the point here is that these microzymas only react to the environment, internal environment in your body. So he's saying they react to that, and that's why you get sick. Okay, so for you to consider. Okay, it's a subject I'm not very interested in at all this medical stuff, but it's for people to consider if they're going to talk about COVID being a hoax. Okay, is there a virus out there? What is a virus? Is the theory of viruses, causing disease, etc., is that the germ theory? Is that a valid theory?
Okay. At what level you want to criticize it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what people have to look at. Now, I do want to tell you that we've seen bacteria under the microscope. Viruses are much smaller. Okay, about 20 times, I think. The 20th. 1/20th the size of maybe the largest bacteria. So viruses are. Remember, virus is a molecule. But it's a special kind of molecule that has a coating. It's got a coat over it of proteins, which is what? A bunch of molecules. So we have a molecule wrapped in molecules, and we call that thing, that entity, which is non-living, according to me. Okay, we call that. It
seems like the precursor to life. It feels like virus.
Yeah, and
like it's the thing between inanimate and animate.
Okay, let's find out. They asked the biologists, what is a virus? Is it a living entity or is it an inert entity? And
it's a zombie.
These are the answers we get today from. These are all experts. Okay, these are from the top universities.
No. What did you find?
So here, no, viruses are not alive, says one guy, and the other guy says yes, viruses are alive.
Oh, that settles it.
One's from Edinburgh University, and the guy from Glasgow University. Okay, so both Scottish here. And first one says, this is how he justifies why they are not alive. Okay, he says, the crucial point is that viruses are not capable of independent replication. They have to replicate within a host cell, and they use or usurp the host cell machinery for this. They do not contain the full range of required metabolic processes and are dependent on their host to provide many of the requirements for their replication. If a virus is alive, should we not also consider DNA molecule to be alive?
That's a really bad logic in my estimation, because like we all depend on other things for
Okay, that's what the other guy answered. Okay, so you got the right reasoning of the second guy. He says they are not alive. I'm sorry, he says they are alive. He says, I would argue that the only satisfactory definition of life therefore lies in the most critical property of genetic heredity, independent evolution. Okay, evolution he's talking about here. Life is the manifestation of a coherent collection of genes that are competent to replicate within the niche in which they evolved. Viruses fulfill this definition. This fellow, David Bella, he said, after all, we all depend on something else. In other words, it's not like we're all independent reproducers.
Yeah.
And so this is the argument between these two fellows.
But they're both thinking about replication, right?
They're both thinking about replication. Let's bring in a third guy. Okay, we're going to bring in a third guy and says, our virus is alive. They ask another, this guy's from Bristol University, okay? And so what does he say? Well, he says viruses are not alive because they do not complete all of the 7 life processes. And he mentions those, the famous ones: movement, respiration, sensitivity, nutrition, etc., etc. Viruses lack essential machinery needed to what? To reproduce themselves. Everybody hits on reproduction. Okay, that's what they're all thinking about.
Do viruses excrete?
In fact, viruses can only reproduce after infecting a living cell. Viruses can only survive for a while outside host cells. Okay, so they're all talking about...
Real quick. Do viruses do all the other 6 of these? Growth, nutrition, sensitivity?
Nutrition, you can say they eat the cell, material from the cell.
Do viruses poop?
But see, they don't really eat it. What they do is they use the atoms, okay? Because it's at the atomic level. Here you have a virus, what is it? A molecule that turns around, makes copies of itself from cell material. So it can only function inside the cell, and that's where it reproduces. If you can call that reproduction, the fact that it's producing copies of itself. It's just creating a longer molecule or making copies of itself parallel to it so that all its kids look like it, but all we're doing is having a molecule that's making copies of itself using someone else's material. And
I like how the first one is movement.
If that's what we're gonna say is life, okay, reproduction. This is what they're all concentrated on. Well, that's why we have to define what life is. I mean, otherwise these guys are because they've been talking like this for at least 100 years.
But they have the 7 criteria.
Yeah, but I think that
motion, excretion,
they're just going to go around in circles because they have all these factors that they think are part of life. And I think we have to define the word life, alive, living, a little more stringently, okay, a little more short, and not have so many variables there and say, well, it's the one that reproduces, the one that ages, has children, moves, etc. And so what is the problem with all these guys? I'm saying that none of them ever defined words scientifically. None of the scientists alive today ever defined or learned to define words scientifically, and they never found a reason to define words scientifically in such a way that they're not only that they are scientific, but that you can use them consistently, that you can know what you're talking about. If they don't define what life is, they're going to go around in circles arguing.
But again, the 7 criteria, you shouldn't have deleted that, because the 7 criteria seem to be what they all hinge their alive or not aliveness on.
Not really, because the one that he really concentrated on was reproduction. I mean, that's where they put the emphasis. Yeah, it's like the other. They mentioned the other, but then they said, "But forget about all that. We're going to do reproduction."
This one.
So this is where I'm going to finish this the extinction part today, and it goes here like this. None of these folks ever defined the disciplines of science, and I give you 4 examples here. What is biology? The scientific study of life. That's the formal definition you'll find out there. Study? In science, we don't study anything. Science is not the study of anything.
Well, that's a relief.
I mean, you can study all year and not know anything. So because you studied, you're a scientist? Everybody studies. I mean, a kindergartner studies. Is he a scientist? So the word study should be removed from the definition of science of any discipline. And
The
you see it in
science-
all of them.
So
They're
you're
all the
saying,
studies.
You're saying the scientific of life just ruled the word study.
Yeah, and the first thing you find about the word life, there is currently no consensus regarding the definition of life. They have no definition, but they're all biologists and they talk around in circles of what if a virus is living or not.
Well, because there's also anaerobic things that we call living, and there's all these
Yeah.
like exceptions to the rules.
Yeah.
Do robots count? You know, all these things. Does a rock count?
And so here you have physics, the natural science of what? Studies matter, energy, and force. What is paleontology? The scientific what? Study. Okay, of life that existed prior to blah 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 blah. Study of fossils to what? To classify organisms. That's stamp collecting. That's not science. All these people talk about studying and collecting and
You know what? I'm
having
gonna
information.
defend the word study because that is essentially what you do, isn't it?
I know, I
You
don't
get
study.
to the
I explain.
bottom-
I explain.
You get to the bottom of physics. What is
Yeah.
that if not studying?
But
All
it's
you
not
do
stu-
is
I could
study-
study and I could reach the wrong answer or Mother
Yeah,
Nature.
but
It's explanation that is. Explanation is science, not study.
but isn't
Anybody can
explanation a
study.
type of studying? You
No,
could say?
it's a conclusion of study.
because yeah.
And then philosophy. What is philosophy? The study of fundamentals, nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. No, the study of existence, if we're going to call it that, is known as physics. Physics studies existence, not philosophy.
I thought people studied this.
Well, that's why here. This is why I put it as definitions in parallel to that, so that you can see where I'm coming from on this. Okay, and just to mention that philosophy. You go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The only word you won't find defined is the word philosophy. They don't have the word philosophy defined in the dictionary, the Encyclopedia of Philosophy at Stanford.
They didn't define their own word.
Yeah, they didn't define it. So I had to define it. So what is it? Science, rational explanations. Biology, explanation involving processes and mechanisms. Physics, and behaviors. Philosophy, of living entities.
Living.
Yeah,
Yes, that would be the
and now we
crucial
have a definition for living, a natural object that moves against the path of least resistance. I used to say it's gravity. My son here corrected me one day and said, no, it's the path of least resistance, and I think he's correct. So I hate him because he corrected me.
Well, to be more specific, the reason we use that wording is going against the path of least resistance basically is a long-winded form of saying you move on your own.
Yeah,
Instead of letting the wind push you, push
right.
against the wind.
And it's correct because we not only push upwards against gravity, like when I jump, but we push against walls sideways as well. Okay. And we also push up, like when we're pushing a box upwards, so we're pushing something upwards, I guess. Okay, physics, rational explanation of causes and mechanisms. What is philosophy? Explanations of human behavior, specifically purposes and reasons. And paleontology, is that collecting bones and putting them in a museum? No, it's rational explanations of mass and background extinctions. That's what a paleontologist is out there for. He's supposed to explain death. He's a necrologist. He's a medical examiner. He's a detective that has to tell us how animals died in the past. Otherwise, we don't need a paleontologist. What people want to know is, how did the dinosaurs die? Don't tell me that you collected some bones and gave it a fancy name and assembled it and put it in a museum. That's a stamp collector.
They're glorified stamp collectors. I thought that is what they were.
Okay, moving on here. Let's do some physics.
Someone says philosophy is a synonym for religion. But you actually split those two, right? Philosophy is a synonym for religion.
No. Obviously, philosophy is not a synonym of religion. Oh. That's exactly where the error is. No. Philosophy is a science. Science and philosophy. It's the science. Philosophy, right? It's the science that explains behavior. In other words, why you did something. Purposes, reasons. So no, philosophy is not religion. Religion is what math does. Math moves, first of all, recommendation, but moving concepts around when you're doing physics, recommendations, politics, that's all religion. That's religion.
Mostly recommendations. I think religion is mostly recommendation on how the best way to live is. But philosophy is more explaining the past tense of that. Why did someone do that? You could get those two mixed up, though, because you could use religion to explain why someone did that. Oh, he had XYZ religion. But I guess that's not That would be philosophy.
No, but again, that's
But
a
again,
that's a
all
reason
these
why
guys-
he did something. You could say it's because of his religion, the way he was brought up. So you're explaining his behavior. No problem there. But giving a recommendations, telling you how to rule the world, the politics, that's opinion. And recommendation, opinion, that's religion. That's just, everybody's an expert in religion, in opinions.
And business. You ask anyone, sell, buy. Oh, you should have sold too early.
Okay, so moving on here, let's move on to physics. And here I'm just going to recap what we did this month, and that's essentially went through the mechanisms Mother Nature uses to do transparency and opacity. I went through at least 5 of these mechanisms, and I'm just going to go through them really quick. I'm just going to mention first that quantum mechanics has no explanation for opacity and transparency. Why? Because they use zero-dimensional particles, which ain't particles, and they use waves, which aren't objects. Okay, a wave is moving vectors. What is a vector? Magnitude and direction. They have all these vectors moving. So they don't have a physical object. They cannot use the term travel through, moving through, go through. They can't do that because you have to identify what object is moving through the substance. And right now we don't have an object proposed by quantum mechanics, okay? Okay, but let's look at what we have. Alignment is one of them. Why alignment? Well, here we did a little experiment, okay? And it goes something like this, okay? We had 2 polarizing lenses, and when we turned it around 90 degrees to the other polarizing lens, the laser disappeared. Okay, it's not on the screen anymore, on the black screen there. And what we're saying is what you see on the left. We're saying when we turn the polarizing lens aside, what we're doing is redirecting the ropes in a different direction.
That's a really cool effect.
Okay, so that's so that's one of the ways I'm saying that Mother Nature does.
I guess you couldn't do that with water when we talked about.
Well, we're getting to that.
Oh, sure.
Give me a second. Yeah,
Okay.
here's the water alignment. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And we have we want to know which one is true on the left. Okay, did the water molecules remain in the same direction with respect to the center of the Earth due to gravity, or did the water molecule stand on its head or on its side? Okay, so that's the question you got to answer in your mind. Again, a question of alignment, but is that why water is transparent? Is it because of alignment, or is it due to something else? So again, I'm giving you the tools to figure out why why some materials are transparent, why they're not.
Those are some hard questions, though.
Yeah, it is.
Noggin scratchers.
Okay, but this is to make people think. Okay, here's quantity. That's the other variable. Okay, and here we have an example. Okay, and here is when we have many of something that is transparent, and now we're going to see when we have only one. So we have a light there, and we put a single sheet, and we can see more or less through that sheet. It's more or less transparent or translucent, if you want to use that word. When we put many of the same transparent materials, many sheets, you see that you can barely see the light. So something that is transparent, if we put many of those, it becomes opaque.
Oh yeah, same thing applies to air, right?
If
you look into the distance, the mountain is foggy.
And that could be smog.
It's blurred. Oh yeah, but smog is the same thing, right? It's basically along the same lines.
There are particles in the air, But yeah, that's the issue. The issue is you put many glasses, they turn green and eventually become opaque. So the same glass that you have in your window that you can see through, put 1,000 of them and you can't see through them.
The same thing applies to water, right? If you put your like a ball underwater just a little bit, the ball is basically the same color, but if you keep taking it down, it's going to start changing. The ball changes color the lower it goes.
And the issue with air is you would have to put a lot of air, and the reason is because air has approximately the same refractive index as vacuum. Okay, so you would need to put lots and lots of air, maybe so far in the distance that to prove your point that you can't see through lots of air.
And it has to be clean air.
You would say, well, I can't see that far, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have temperature is another variable. Okay, here I made the example where I took
Whoa,
a
that's
bunch
cool.
of ice and I let it melt, and you can see that suddenly the pen appears through the water. So what was opaque became transparent simply because of temperature. Okay. Now, one fellow pointed out, says, well, in the case of ice, you're freezing also air in
Yeah,
there.
that's what I was
Okay.
gonna say.
Okay, fine, no problem. But see, here's another example. Okay, and this is argon. Okay. And argon, when it's solid or liquid, is more or less transparent. But when argon is in a gaseous state, it's violet and it's no longer transparent. So it's the other way around in the case of.
That isn't because it's being cooked or ionized.
Yeah, it's true, but I mean, the point here is that here you have the opposite effect. Here you have it transparent when it's in the solid or liquid state, or more or less transparent, translucent. Okay, but when you heat it up, okay, or you ionize it, well, then suddenly it's no longer transparent. That's the point I'm trying to make. So all I'm saying is temperature has an effect on translucency or transparency or opacity. Okay.
I think the temperature one's more easy to understand.
Well, let's continue because they're related to that. Two things are related to that. I mentioned that the other day, and one is stiffness. Okay, so here we have solid, liquid, and gas, and the issue is that if you have sound travels faster through a solid than through liquid, and through liquid faster than through gas.
Okay, that's a really cool gift.
Yeah.
I like
So
that one.
so what you have is sound travels faster. So the question is, why would not something which is solid be more transparent than gas? Because you would think that light has an easier time to travel through something solid than through something that is gaseous. And so the question is, why doesn't light travel through walls? If sound can travel faster through a wall than through a gas. Okay, so this is the issue. And so the question is a question of stiffness, which is related to temperature. Okay, and so here we see.
Damn.
Here we see a fellow who questions and asks this, or makes this comment. He says, I think light can be compared to sound. Okay, let's find out. Light is torsional and sound is longitudinal. Yeah. Okay, and the speed of sound is limited by how fast one molecule can transfer its motion to the adjacent molecule. We're talking about molecules, atoms, right? Light obviously is not the vibration of either.
I like transfer its motion. That's a nice way of putting it.
The speed of light is limited by how fast one part of the rope can relay its twisting to the next part, how stiff the rope itself is. And yeah, I made a point of saying that, the speed of light is a constant. I know some people have problems with that because their religion goes down the drain. The speed of light is a constant because, with a rope, very easy to explain, the number of links is inversely proportional to the length of a link. And the fewer links I have, the longer the link becomes. And the more links I have, the shorter the links become. And that's what that equation says. C equals frequency times wavelength. Wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional. And there you see the ropes. You can see 4 links or semi-links, 8 and 16. Okay? And it turns out that this is related to how hot something is as well. Okay, the colder it is, the more we approach, the infrared, and the hotter it is, the more we approach the ultraviolet. Okay, so not only do we have frequency related to temperature, but we're gonna find out in a second that there's something else involved. Okay, but here, just continuing with this analogy of sound. Okay, sound is longitudinal. Okay, the particles don't travel from my mouth to your ear. The particle that I'm moving here is not the one that reaches your ear. What's vibrating is the molecules close to your ear, and that's why you can hear. Yeah. So I'm not sending you particles through the air to your ear. What you're hearing is
the motion.
The motion that I vibrate close to your ear.
That's
okay.
Weird. I mean, it's always the same gas thing just tapping on my ear, basically. It's the same molecule.
If you carry it with you, yeah.
If you stood still, it's basically like a telegram.
Yeah, so be aware of that.
That's crazy.
And
Yeah.
and the question is whether that's the case with a light. Here we have a gentleman. His name was Christian Huygens. Okay, he was
Higgins.
Dutch philosopher, well, physicist, mathematician, whatever you want to call them. I don't think they were physicists because they did more math than physics. But he's the guy who, in Trait de la Lumière, in 1690, his seminal book, he explained how water waves move. And the question is, is a water wave the same as a light wave? He thought it was at the time. Later on, they discovered the transverse wave. That was Augustin Fresnel. He came up with the transverse wave, which was later mathematized by James Maxwell, okay, a few years later. But the issue is, water waves and sound waves, are those the same thing as light waves? And like this fellow said, one is longitudinal and the other one's not. The other one is so-called transverse. It's not really transverse either, okay, because it's not a standing wave. It's not like you move the rope up and down, okay? It's not like that, which is the way usually it's imitated or simulated. No, what we're talking about is torsion here, which is a little different than moving this up and down, okay? So it's the transverse wave which moves up and down perpendicular to the direction of motion of the wave.
I guess it's
That's
confusing
not
to call them all waves.
Yeah. And so I don't think, I'm going to disagree with this gentleman, and I'm going to say that no, I don't think you can relate sound waves to.
Because structurally they're different.
Yeah, one relies.
One goes up and down, one is.
Not only goes up and down, but one relies on molecules and atoms. The other one is not really that. What you're talking about is a rope. And now we have torsion versus up and down or back and forth in the case of sound, right? In the case of water waves, you have these ripples, which Huygens explained quite well. You have a point source from which a secondary source originates, okay? A secondary wave originates from there. And all these are different waves. Okay, and a standing wave is different than really a torsion.
It's confusing to call them all waves then.
You can call them wave as long as you clarify what kind of wave that is.
Okay, but what are we saying?
Qualitatively,
when we say wave, it's different ways of transferring motion. Isn't that what we're
correct? Yeah, it is. Okay, let's continue here. So we finish
But by that same notion, the Newton cradle could also be called a wave.
Yeah, it is.
But you don't really think of it in the term of wave. You're not.
When one hits the other,
Yeah.
there it goes. Okay, so this was frequency, and again, it's got to do with rigidity, and rigidity has to do with temperature. What are we talking about? We're saying that if you have light coming to a wall, the atoms are stiff there because they're all in a lattice, a crystal lattice. The atoms don't move around as much like as air on the bottom there. And so what happens is it's a shock absorber. And so what continues is a longer wavelength, and that's why it's beyond the visible range. So I'm saying that light is relayed through the cement wall from atom to atom. It doesn't come out the other side as light into your eye. Why? Because it's got a much longer wavelength. Okay. In the case of air, it doesn't do the same effect, and so apparently rigidity has something to do again with why something is opaque or transparent. But
if you froze air and made it a wall, it would still be transparent, I'm guessing.
Well, again, I showed frozen air the other day, and it's opaque. Okay, it turns bluish. Okay, and here you see another example of this, and that's when you send light, visible light through a prism, it breaks down in different colors. That means the prism, which is a solid object, is somehow serving as a shock absorber. And when it comes out the other side, the wavelengths are longer. In fact, it breaks up into the different wavelengths such a way that you get colors. What is color? Wavelengths.
I like that microwaves and radio waves are light that goes through walls. That's a good way of saying it. They're invisible light.
Okay, and final issue here related to this. We say that quantum can't use particles or waves because what are waves? Waves are a bunch of vectors. All those blue and red arrows that are moving there, those are vectors. What is a vector? It's magnitude and direction. What are we talking about? Numbers. What is a particle? Well, the particle of quantum is not a particle. It's not a corpuscle. What it is a zero-dimensional wave function collapse, if you can understand that. Okay, it's a field that's collapsed because you touched it or looked at it or whatever.
Why do we need that reminder though?
Well, because to show that for what I'm going to say next, and that's this: people think that water, that waves and particles go through water, and that's not true. Because before you can say travel through, going through, moving through, you got to identify what it is that is traveling, what is moving. And you can't use waves and you can't use particles. So please be creative and tell me what physical object is traveling through, moving through. And you can't say, well, it's light. Well, yeah, you got to tell me what light is made of. And you can't say particles or waves, transverse waves at least. Okay, so that's the issue. The issue is, if you're going to use the term travel through, going through, moving through, water, air, glass, no problem. Tell me what it is, what physical object is moving through, okay? Maybe you're talking about a ghost. Okay, let's get down to the questions people asked. Okay, you got to give these people priority because they paid attention. And here's one: says, consider closing a pair of scissors. The intersection of corner of where the blades meet is an illusory object that appears to travel much faster than the blades do. What he's saying, without going through all his reading here, he's saying that if you take a pair of scissors and you move them like this, and the scissors are infinite, okay, the blades are, the end of the blade is on the other side of the universe. Well, then the two ends of the blades come faster together than the speed of light. That's what he's saying. What's the problem I have with this? Because he's suggesting that if we replace the scissors with ropes, okay, then he's saying that the two objects in the distance would travel faster than light towards each other because if we're doing the scissor kind of thing. But he's wrong. See, he's talking about something totally that's got no sense whatsoever. The speed of light is along the rope, okay? What he's confusing here is what they talked about in several places. One of them is the frequently asked questions of physics from what is it?
Quora?
No, it's another. It's one of the universities. I can't remember now. But the point is, they said, well, is there something that can travel faster than light? And people say, well, I can imagine something that travels faster than light. We take a scissors, again, they're lengthy, extremely lengthy. You put them together here, and over there they go faster than light. One blade approaches the other, one end of the blade approaches the other end of the blade faster than the speed of light. And so this is, or you can take anything for that matter. You can take a laser pointing at the moon, and suddenly you point it, at Jupiter, and suddenly the end of that light travel faster than light. And so they said, what do you mean faster than light? And you can't do that with a rope, because we're not saying that there is any speed limit faster or even slower than light. In other words, light always travels at the same speed. And what we're talking about is along the length of the rope and not the scissor mechanism, okay? Yeah. So these are two different things. Okay, here's another question. It says, any chance for the rope to fully untwist into two parallel threads? Well, you can make the assumption that you want. And one of the assumptions I make, again, this is up to every person.
Here the assumption is that there are two threads that make the whole shebang.
Yeah,
instead of one.
No. I think what he's saying is the following: if you untwist the rope, right, then can you get two parallel threads? Yeah. And the first thing is, you as the presenter, as the guy giving an explanation, to a physical phenomena, you can make the assumption you want, and you can make that assumption. You don't have to ask my permission for that. That's one issue. The other issue is that I make that same assumption, when I'm saying what happens with a rope that extends to the other side of the universe, or from one galaxy to another. In between, does it untwist? Yeah. Okay, and then retwist in the other direction as it moves onwards? And so maybe this is one of the assumptions you have to make, especially for extremely long distances, such as, on the other side of the universe. Maybe it's one of the reasons we can't see the stars in between the stars. Because they're so far away, because at some point it untwists and goes in the other direction, so we can't see that star because it's untwisted itself.
We call them lazy ropes. It's just floating there. This kind of thread.
Okay, another issue here. Oh my God, this all. It says a laser will partially reflect and partially transmit. Well, everything that you see in green there, I'll let you read that, is stuff that we already know. So he just regurgitates the same thing, and he's not addressing the issue. So the issue is not any of the things that he mentioned there.
Wait,
Okay?
what's the topic?
And the topic has to do with, you know, when a one-way mirror. You look at yourself in the mirror and you see your reflection. It turns out that the person on the other side of the mirror, they can see you and you can't see them because you see yourself and they see you. They don't see themselves. Yeah. It's a one-way mirror. And so the question, this is the issue. He's not addressing the issue. All he's doing is just regurgitating what is already out there, and it has nothing to do with the question at hand. What is the question at hand? The last comment that he made there. He says, a material appears transparent when it does not strongly absorb or diffract light. Okay, so this is the issue. The issue is absorb light. What does quantum say? Well, quantum says what you see on the bottom there. You have a photon, that red ball, and it hits the electron in an atom. This is what quantum says, okay? If it hits it with enough energy that the photon jumps to the next energy level, the photon is absorbed. If it doesn't have enough, if the photon doesn't have enough energy to boost that electron to the next energy level, then it continues through or is spit out again by the electron, whichever one you want, and the material is transparent. So here's the $1 million question that this fellow doesn't want to answer. Now, this is 3 times now. He doesn't want to answer because he can't answer the question, first of all. And so he alludes at saying, oh, I can answer the question. No, he never did. And this is the question. This is the $1 million question he's got to answer. And until he answers this question, all he's doing is just eluding it. Okay? We have the guy who looks at the mirror, he sees himself. The gal looks at the so-called mirror, which for her is a glass, and she sees him. Is the glass coated? Yes. Is it a question of lighting on her side and his side? Yes. Those are not the issues. Those are not at all the issues that we have before us. What is the issue? The issue is the thickness of the glass. Keep in mind, we're trying to answer the quantum question. We're saying that a photon hits an electron and either has the enough energy to knock it to a new energy level or it doesn't. If it doesn't, it goes through, and if it does, it gets absorbed. That's the issue that we have to address. And here we have 2 lasers on the bottom. We have one on one side of the glass, the other one on the other side of the glass. We're only going to look at the photons that make up the laser, not the ones that make up the room, not that make up the glass or whatever. We're only looking at the photons of the laser. Okay?
Both lasers.
Yeah, both lasers. And the question is the material that have to go through the same in either direction? Is the material, are the number of atoms, the number of molecules the same in either direction? And the answer is yes. Yeah. And so the question is, why is it absorbed? Because that's what quantum says, okay? Quantum says that the electron absorbs. If it absorbs the photon, then it doesn't go through. Well, here we have the same electrons in both directions. Why does it absorb it in one direction and not in the other? And it's got nothing to do with the lighting in the room or the coating on the mirror. So don't use that issue again.
They both still have to go through
so the same amount of material.
Not only the same amount, but the same type of material. It's just one hits the...
One is absorbed, the other one is not.
Well, no, but here in this case, the light coming from one direction hits the surface of a different... The first material that the light hits is what makes it reflect or refract.
Right. It's got nothing to do with the material that constitutes the entire glass, because it should, in either direction, you know, it should be absorbed or not, because that same atom that absorbs the electron, the photon coming from the left, should be absorbing also the one from the right. And why doesn't it absorb it? Okay, why does it absorb it in one direction and not in the other direction? That's the question you have to answer. And if you can't answer that question, please don't insist, because you've answered the same thing 3 times now, and you haven't answered the question. Okay, so just want to make sure we got that one straight. Okay.
Wait, did you answer the question?
No, I didn't answer the question. I just gave you the example that quantum mechanics has an irrational explanation for why it's transparent in one direction and opaque in the other direction. The irrationality consists in that the electron of one atom
because they both
should absorb in either direction.
Yeah, because they both have to go through that electron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't absorb it in one direction, you got to tell me why it absorbs it in one direction, it doesn't absorb it in the other. It has nothing to do with the coating, has nothing to do with the lighting in the room. It's got to do with the religion of quantum mechanics that says a photon is absorbed by an electron.
Well, how does it work on the rope model?
That's what I left for as homework. And I'm not going
for yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to skip the question. I want people to think out there. I'm giving you the tools. What are they? Alignment, okay, temperature, quantity of material, okay, stiffness.
Yeah, but they still have to
I'm giving you all these, and
you
have to apply those to glass, water, air, and find out why those are transparent, why a brick wall is not.
But both quantum and the rope model both have to explain why going through the same amount of material doesn't lead to the same outcome.
You got it.
That's basically it.
We have to all answer that question. That's a question for everybody. Okay, 2 more issues here, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Here it is. Fellow says, Gady's scientific method is not without problems. Oh, okay, let's find out what the problems are. It uncritically assumes the existence of objects.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
we're going way back. Okay.
So this guy does it with ghosts and goblins and phantoms and spirits. I guess that's how he thinks that the universe runs. He thinks that because a pen, falls to the floor, I'm assuming that there's an object that pulled it down, and he's saying no, that's a wrong assumption. So what is he going to do it with? With ghosts and goblins? Okay, is that what physics is about? Introducing black magic. Okay, so he mentions the establishment's version quite well, but again, he's just a religious individual. That's all he is. Okay, if you're not gonna assume objects, then you're introducing black magic.
I mean,
that's
you think that's just kind of like a given.
Okay, but here we have.
Unless you're talking about like the Matrix or something, where it's just all in our heads or some shit. It's all virtual.
Yeah, I guess. But here we have even worse people. This fellow says it is a moot point that light determines speed's limit. Dielectric force is the cause of the gravity effect. So now the homework for you is to guess whether this guy's a flat earther or electric universer. I mean, anyone who says that electricity is gravity, which is what this guy is saying, well, he belongs to one of these two groups. And so your job is to figure out if this guy is a flat earther or a electric universer.
Could be both.
Okay, what questions do we have today? Let's find out.
Not that many, I noticed.
Okay, good. It means we retire early today.
Yeah.
Or we answered all the questions.
We have a lot of more statements and people's opinions rather than questions.
No.
What does JF say on viruses? Do you know what JF is?
Yeah, JF, well, remember he's a biologist, or claims to be a biologist. I tend to disagree, because a biologist is a person who has to define the word alive, because, biology is a person who explains things related to living entities. And if you don't know what a living entity is because you never defined the term, then I don't know if JF can tell me whether what is a living entity. And so I don't know what his answer would be. First he has to define life, then he can tell me whether a virus is alive or not, and he would have to justify it through his definition.
This wasn't a question, but it's a question I'll pull out of the comments. Do rich people have bunkers in New Zealand where they will go to when the shit hits the fan?
Well, I don't know if they do, but if they do have bunkers, the big problem there is that, are they going to have servants? Are they going to take their servants in there like, the ancient pharaohs used to take their servants with them to death? Well, their servants don't have to respect them once they're in the bunker, okay? Because they have no way of controlling their servants. If their servants are young and they're supposedly
they have
know karate or whatever to protect them, I don't know how they're going to control them. What are they going to give them? Money?
Is the rope good to hang with?
Yeah.
Had to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Clothesline.
You can hang anywhere. Go slowly.
No, it's because I was reading them as we
okay.
went. That's why. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. We have a lot of questions here. I mean, you can go through them later if you want them answered, but they don't seem very.
Okay, folks, if
Answerable.
we haven't addressed your question either through the lecture or here, well,
Oh no, we have a few here at the end.
you do have some?
Do you have friends who watch lectures of your father? Yeah, sometimes we watch them.
Oh, you do watch them?
Yeah, I mean, our criticisms are more how he, the ums and ahs, but not really about the.
Do you still have friends after
Yes, I don't show them very often. I mean, physics debates in my friends groups tend to. I mean, we don't really go there very often.
No, but you do. I mean, you get
once a year tops. But even then,
I don't know. Every time I go to lunch with these guys,
well, yeah, because you don't shut up about it.
Yeah, we end up talking about extinction and physics.
I mean, surprise, he's the type of guy where any conversation either leads to end of the world, light, or what was that? Some magnetism, something like. It always ends up in one of those.
Okay, well, we'll if we haven't answered your question, just ask it in the comment section when we put up the video.
Bill, how are you part of the last generation when you have progeny on your right? Hey, you're not the last generation. Get the fuck out of here. It's heavy last.
We'll see you next time, folks. Sunday.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.